from multiple different angles. And I just want to share with you at least like three different strategies that I think that you could use kind of immediately to, the reason I'm looking down is I have my notes here. The three strategies to avoid what I would consider to be like the most common mistakes. Okay. Now, I think the first challenge or issue that I see is number one, kind of going the traditional route of developing. And I've done this myself, which is you find land and then you hire an architect and you get some of your consultants to get, some plans, right? Whether it's schematics or some sort of high level rendering so that you can go out and either get pre-leasing or take it to the bank. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that inherently, but here's where the challenges break down is when you, as the developer, you continue going down the path and then you get a full set of DP and then you go and likely even go to, all the way to building permit. And then you tender it out and you give, let's say, 5 or 6 various general contractors 2 weeks to tender it, which is to price it out. And then you make a decision. And usually it's not based solely on cost, although that is usually the game that gets played. And what I can tell you, being on both sides of that equation, is a few things. Number one, let's say the drawings and the your plans take, 3 to 6 months to create. And then you're going to give general contractors 2 weeks to price that out, right? And to me, the tendering process there is so many flaws in it that it's extremely difficult to get good, solid pricing. And I'll just give you one example. Let's say these 6 GCs are essentially going to most of the same tradespeople. And the trades, they don't want to get their number shopped. And so literally the last 30 minutes before a tender closes is when all the numbers come in. And there's a bunch of exclusions, but the contractors are frantically plugging in to their bid the numbers that they're getting, but they haven't had the time to like properly vet those numbers to see what the exclusions are, to see what materials are being used, and it's just a very archaic way in my experience. And I can tell you as a developer, I rarely, I don't do this anymore, obviously, but even when I did, I could just see the challenges, right? And I'll tell you, like, one of the things that I've discovered is there's a game that gets played, right? And call it right or wrong, it still gets played. And one of the challenges is, as a general contractor, if you price in all of the mistakes that are made during that, in the drawings, if you will, and you try to price that in up front, it may be, first of all, it may frustrate or piss off the architect, right? Because no one wants to be called out on their mistakes. And I guess, secondly, the extra costs generally put you at a disadvantage as a contractor. And so what you're trying to do is build trust and, essentially help out the developer, but it almost backfires. And so usually the game just gets played and, you get the drawings, you win the bid, and then it's just essentially a battle with change orders and time delays because there's mistakes in the drawings. So the solution, at least in my experience, is pre-construction and really picking a general contractor early to help you through the design phase and value engineer to catch any mistakes now before it's too late. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into like pre-construction and what, is entailed, but I will tell you that there's a couple of things. Number one, as a developer, I would make sure that you're not obligated to use that contractor after pre-con. If they deliver value, then you have the option, right? And generally speaking, if someone spent the last 3 months, created a tremendous amount of value, found the mistakes, works well with the architect as well as the other consultants, then you can see that this is going to be a good thing moving forward, right? Because when we get into number 2 mistake, which is having the wrong team, you see how important this is. And I'll tell you a few stories actually. And all of these are just my own personal stories. But the second big mistake is picking the wrong team. Okay, so your consultants are going to usually be made up of an architect, civil, structural, mechanical, electrical, likely a geotech if you're doing ground up. And then obviously your general contractor, right? And then under the GC, you're going to have a bunch of sub trades. So those are kind of the primary people that make up the team. Now, inside of your team, you're going to have what's called your prime consultant. And your prime consultant is like the person that takes charge of the entire consultants, if you will, and interfaces and really kind of holds people accountable. And what happens is with the wrong prime consultant, we ran into this on one of our projects where the architect got into a disagreement, significant one. I mean, it should have been something that was just resolved in 30 minutes. However, it escalated to the point where the architect basically told me, Shane, I'm shutting your project down. And it was really just ego. There was no reason to do it, but they were going to shut us down. They were not going to sign the Schedule C. The Schedule C is essentially what we needed to give to the bank to get our next construction draw, which means that we couldn't get the money to pay our sub-trades, our general contractor, and then our property would be liened and it would go into, 4 months of a legal battle. So that is just a demonstration of what can happen when you have the wrong person on your team. Okay. That's just one example. I've had other projects where the structural engineer, I didn't realize it until too late into the project, over-engineered what we needed in terms of like the roof trusses and all the rest of it. And the design cost us an extra $100,000 to $150,000. I've had another where the geotech basically said, this is the only way to do it. Fortunately, we got a second opinion and we were able to save about $500,000 and 12 months delay on our project. So this is like the things that can happen. And unfortunately, if you're new to development, like I was, you don't know what you don't know. And so having seen development from multiple perspectives, I'm just sharing with you some of the things that can happen. And hopefully you don't have to learn this the hard way, because the reality is if you've got a $3, $5, $10 million development, any one of these mistakes can cost you millions. And that's not an exaggeration. I've seen multiple developers, even seasoned developers, lose multiple millions of dollars because they didn't have the right plan, the right contractor, the right team around them. Okay, the third strategy or mistake, if you will, is having the right relationships. And what I mean by relationships, I'm gonna use the word leverage. And I hope people don't take it the wrong way, but it's just the reality of business. And that is being able to leverage and push people to help you out, because the reality is in construction and development, you're problem solving constantly. And at least in my experience, there's kind of three types of general contractors out there. You've got the really small or like micro GCs, and then you've got the really big, like the massive, like the PCLs, the maybe here in Calgary, Chandos or someone like that, like that's quite large. And then you have what I would consider to be like the mid-range general contractors, people that kind of focus on the $2 to $25 million range. And that's kind of where our company, Calamar, fits, because it's right in the middle where we do enough business that we do have pull with the suppliers, with the trades, with the consultants. You're not so small that you don't have any kind of pull, and you're not so large that the reality is that, usually the big companies just have so much overhead that they're not competitively priced for smaller projects. And I can tell you that on a project that we're building right now, that ability to leverage, and not doing it in a way that hurts any of our suppliers or tradespeople, but it's just like, look, we give you $5 to $10 million of business. We need you to help us out on this. We need you to, tighten up your numbers. We need you to go the extra mile. We need you to value engineer. And, if you do that across, all the different disciplines, it can save you anywhere from 5 to 8%, at least in my experience, right? And so if you've got a project that is pretty tight, let's say it's a $2 million project and you say 5%, that's $100,000. So those become meaningful. And the inverse, obviously, is if you don't have any of those, if you don't have the ability to leverage, then you either pay more, you get delayed. I mean, on a recent project where we didn't have that kind of leverage, unfortunately, we were delayed 3.5 months. And 3.5 months, when you're not collecting $20,000 from one tenant a month, that's minimum $60,000. plus the extra fees that it costs on financing and dealing with the bank. Like, time definitely can kill developers. Okay. So that's what I wanted to talk about here today. I'll just kind of recap the three strategies that you can hopefully use. Hopefully, this was, I mean, it's high level. If you're interested and you want to attend the more in depth training that I'm going to do, it's this Thursday. Just shoot me a message or something like that, and I'll try to get you the details. I'm not the one hosting it. I'll just try to get you the login for it. So those three strategies are: number one, pre-construction, get and dial in your plans and drawings early. Number two, make sure you got the right team. Get them working together, like everybody, including the general contractor, because the GC and the architect really have to work together. If they're like butting heads, it's just going to frustrate the process. I've dealt with it. I don't like it. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. And then the third is relationships, right? Because the relationships are the people that are going to be solving problems, or the inverse of that is creating problems. So hopefully that helps. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a longer training on this. And if I can get the recording, I'll even share it here on my podcast or on YouTube. But if I don't get the recording, then you probably want to show up live. That's it. Bye for now.